Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this episode today, going to be a solo episode, a shorter one. Going to be talking about the Black Ops 6 announcements, some roster moves, who's going to be making champs based on the schedules, thoughts on XDefiant, and predictions for the week 1 matches coming up here. So if you guys enjoy this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio platforms, drop a follow, drop a 5-star review. We appreciate all your support. As always, you guys crushed it on the last video. One of the best videos back-to-back, over 1K on the view department on YouTube. Lots of interaction. Loved seeing all your guys' comments and thoughts and everything. Obviously, a lot of interaction because OpTic winning always, draws out a lot of, interactions and viewership, and we appreciate all you OpTic fans tuning into the pod. Brock is out of town for the holiday weekend, getting back a little bit later than I did. So he's not going to be on today. Unfortunate because we can't do the player tier list, but he will be back next week, and maybe we'll do it then, depending on how much we have to talk about with the matches. But I still got a lot to dive into today, so I'm super excited. First thing I wanted to quick touch on was the Black Ops 6 announcement. Obviously, you guys know I am super excited for that. If any of you know basically how we feel on the podcast about Call of Duty games, both Brock and I are very big Treyarch fans, as I feel like a lot of, especially the competitive community is in general. I don't think anybody could really make the argument that over the course of Call of Duty's history, Treyarch has been the best developer. To me, it's like not even a debate. I mean, every Black Ops game, really. I know like people will say Call of Duty 3 was terrible or whatever. I wasn't around to play that, so I can't really talk to that, but I believe the people that say that. But I mean, really, Black Ops 1, 2, 3, 4, and Cold War, all above average games in terms of, if you look at the entire landscape of Call of Duty's history, I would say they all fall on the upper half of games. For me, especially Black Ops 3 and 4, obviously Black Ops 2, classic, like many people would say the GOAT game, especially competitive-wise. But for me, Black Ops 3 and 4 were like my two favorite games to play with my friends. Just absolutely super fun. Cold War was awesome too. Obviously, Black Ops 2 is incredible. And Black Ops 1, I wasn't really as much into the competitive side, but it was really the first COD, because I was more of a Halo kid, Halo player. So Black Ops 1 was really the first COD I like dove into to play like a bunch of pubs. Didn't even really know what competitive was. But I love that game as well. So I'm super excited for Black Ops 6. And they've had like basically the longest development cycle of any COD in history, to my knowledge. So super excited to see that, what Treyarch can do with the longer development cycle. I have full faith in them. I'm really hoping they deliver because for me, obviously, like I said, Black Ops games always my favorite. So I think the potential is super high. Obviously, we really don't know much about the game yet. I've seen some like rumored lists where a lot of old school maps can return. I saw Firing Range on there, which is one of my favorite pubs maps of all time. Absolutely loved it. Never really played a competitive on it because I know it was mostly a Black Ops 1 competitive map, and like I said, I wasn't really into the scene yet at that point, so don't know too much about it competitively. Besides, I've seen like one clip of Fear Assassin making some play on it or something, a legendary old school player assassin. But excited for Black Ops 6. I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. Anytime we get a new Call of Duty announcement, it's always really exciting, especially in my opinion when it's a Treyarch game, because shoot, it's been quite a while. Cold War, we've gone to Vanguard, MW2, and now MW3 since Cold War. It'll be 4 years basically since Cold War when this comes out, so I'm very excited for it. Hopefully Treyarch delivers as always. In terms of roster news, we do have a little bit coming out of the Major Maniac is joining the Boston Breach. Pentagram to the bench, and it sounds like Priesta to the SMG. Now, does Boston making a roster change really matter that much? Probably not, just because they are, so far looking at the standings, they are at 50 points, 5-20 series record on the year. And 8th place right now is 120, and basically everybody, from 5 through 11, it's 130, 130, 125, 120, 120, 110, 110. So it's not like there's like a gap where they can kind of nestle their way in there. They're 70 points down, and there's a lot of teams that have a chance to make up some points. So Boston pretty much needs to make like an incredible run, win almost all their online matches, have like a crazy tournament where they make a great run. So probably unlikely, but I mentioned it on Twitter. I think it was going to be hard for them to sign any players because like what player was going to go there and ruin their stock for no chance at champs. But to me, Major Maniac is a player that makes sense from like his viewpoint to sign there because like, he's an older player, not necessarily that he's like super old, but he's been around, for quite a while. Like we've seen him play professional in many games. Like maybe his stock was a little bit lower than it had ever been. We don't know if he's going to get another chance in the league. So it's not a bad thing because, like, to me, he doesn't have much to lose because everybody knows he's a pretty known commodity. So, like, he may not get another chance besides this one. So, what's worst case? He comes in, maybe he doesn't play the best. The team doesn't really get any better. And, like, I feel like his stock probably stays the same unless he gets absolutely destroyed. Or absolute best case, he comes in, plays like absolutely insane. The team makes some crazy turnaround. They make champs. Like, he's viewed as like the savior. Definitely secures a roster spot on a team for next year, probably Boston or something. Don't think that'll happen, but it could be somewhere in the middle too, where like he comes in, improves Boston a lot. They still don't make champs because, like I said, it's going to take like an insane run, winning like almost all their matches to make champs. So he could come in, play really well. Boston does improve. Let's say they even go like a 4-3 split or a 3-4 split and make it to winner's bracket. Maybe win a match or two, get a top 6, somehow like squeak out a top 4. They still don't make champs, but like Major Maniac drastically improves the team. Like, I feel like he maybe then moves himself back into the conversation for getting a main AR flex spot, whatever, next year. I just don't feel like there's a lot of like loss scenario for him just being more of a veteran player. Like, anytime he gets a chance to prove what he can do in the league, maybe it can get him another shot where it's not like it's a young player where like it's your first appearance in the league and you could really ruin your stock if you go out there and play terrible on a bad team. So if that makes sense, I feel like he's a player that it does make sense to potentially take that Boston offer and try to prove that he still has it. I'm excited to watch the team though, because Major Maniac is a player I really enjoy watching. He's got the ice. He's a clutch player, always coming up in the big moment. So excited to see if he can improve this Boston squad a little bit and make them a little bit more competitive. One other thing I want to touch on is who the hell is making champs. So obviously, like I said, the race is extremely tight. You've got Miami and Surge in 5th and 6th, tied at 130. LAT is holding the sole possession of 7th at 125. Carolina is holding the tiebreaker on the 8th spot with 120. Minnesota's in 9th with 120 as well. And then Vegas and LAG are both at 110. So literally any of that, like 4 combination of those 7 teams could make it. Obviously, Boston technically not mathematically eliminated, but we're kind of ruling them out for this experiment. So I kind of went through and looked at the schedules remaining for this major of each team. I didn't necessarily write down the whole schedule because that would be a lot to dive into. But I did mark down their matches against the top 4 teams. And I think everybody is going to groan when they hear this and not be happy. But technically, based on how many matches they have against the top 4 teams, this split, the most favorable schedule of any of the teams trying to qualify for champs is probably the team that all of us want to see the least there, and that's LAG. They only play Atlanta in this split. They do not play Toronto, OpTic, or NYSL. So I have LAG schedule up here. They start off with Carolina. So, not the easiest match, but, definitely easier than the top 4. Then they play LAT, who they own usually. Then they play Miami. Then they have their one match against Faze, and they end up against Boston, Vegas, and Seattle. So LAG certainly with the most favorable online schedule to make champs. Then next after them is probably Seattle, as they only play Toronto and NYSL. So probably our 3 and 4 teams among our top 4. And then everybody else plays a combination of the top 3. Carolina, LAT, Miami, Minnesota, and Las Vegas all play some combination of the top 3. And Miami is the one team that has the ultimate gauntlet because everybody else in there plays NYSL as one of their top 3 teams, who's probably like the worst one. But Miami has to play Atlanta, OpTic, and Toronto, the 3 best. So Miami with a very tough schedule there. If I had to make a prediction for who I think is going to make champs, not even like really basing it on the schedule, I think Surge still, because they are at 130. They're tied for the leader among those 7 teams. I think Surge are going to make it because they've looked good and they only played 2 of the top 4 teams, in this split. So I do believe Surge are going to make it. I believe LAT are going to make it. I think they're finally going to have a performance on LAN. I'm going to go and say Carolina are going to make it. And then that last spot, Miami's schedule is tough, and I don't know. I don't think LAG has a chance. I really do think the last spot's going to come down to Rocker, Vegas, or Miami. I'm going to say if Rocker would make a roster change and bring in Slasher for accuracy, I would say I'm not ready to claim the 8th spot yet. I think Surge, LAT, and Carolina are going to make it, though. And those are the 3 teams I really want to make it, and that's also maybe why I'm saying that. But then that last spot's going to come down to me, Legion, Rocker, or Miami. I don't really think LAG has a shot despite the easy schedule. Like, I kind of hope not. But yeah, I'm going to go say Surge, Thieves, and Ravens are making it. I'm kind of going to hold out on my judgment for the last spot. But an interesting race. It's going to make the online matches really, really, really fun leading up here to this final split. So really excited to watch that because all these matches between the non-top 4 teams are actually finally have a little more meaning behind them rather than just not the best COD to watch. So yeah, very, very interested to see that. Another thing I wanted to touch on, XDefiant. Obviously not technically Call of Duty related, but just curious to hear your guys' thoughts. If any of you, I'm sure most of you, I mean, that are Call of Duty fans have at least tried to play XDefiant. Like, it's obviously right in that arcade shooter genre, like a game similar to Call of Duty. Obviously, a lot of Call of Duty influence on it, with Hecz being one of the developers on it. I believe Pac-Man, former Call of Duty pro and coach, I mean, involved in it as well. I believe, obviously, the head, I believe his name is Mark Rubin, I think pretty much was like the lead developer or lead designer on MW2, or was heavily involved in MW2, the original one, many years ago when I was a kid. So a lot of Call of Duty influence on it. Like, the game, obviously arcade shooter, but also has like some Overwatch type elements to it, where it's like you have some like abilities and stuff. Obviously not like Overwatch with all like the tanks and extreme health and all that, but you know what I mean. It has some abilities on there, kind of like specialists, almost BO3, BO4 like. Curious to hear you guys' thoughts, because obviously, like, it's doesn't feel like as polished and as smooth. I feel like in the arcade shooter genre, for that style of shooter, like the Call of Duty style, it's hard to be smoother than Call of Duty, just because, like, even if the game technically like would feel smoother, it's just we've all been playing Call of Duty for so many years that we're so used to that movement style and that the way that game's played, that I feel like we're all just thinking that Call of Duty is like the smoothest game in that genre forever and always, because we're just so used to it. However, I really like the way XDefiant plays. Does it have issues? Absolutely. Like the net code, you're getting shot around walls sometimes, and people are complaining about no kill streaks and stuff. But I think the game has a really fun feel. I was absolutely frying in it. I mean, I was dropping 60, 70, 80 bombs, having a ton of fun just playing like the hardpoint mode and all that. I'm really excited for ranked play. I know they have like a trial ranked play in there right now where you can play like rule sets and stuff, and, you know, play like mock games where there's no rank. And I think ranked is coming soon, as well as like search and destroy and all that coming soon. So I'm really, really, really excited for the ranked play. I'm interested to see, like, I've seen like Zero, I believe, said he'll be trying to compete in that. I think like I heard Spacely maybe trying to compete, and maybe many former COD pros or like challenger players could try to make a switch if there is like a dedicated scene for it, which I believe Ubisoft in the past, as people had said, is very dedicated to like the esports scene. So I don't know too much about them and stuff like that in terms of esports scene, but I'm very interested to see how much investment there is into it, because I believe, like, yeah, Ubisoft's the maker of Rainbow Six Siege, and I think they have like heavy investment into esports there. So that would be very interesting to see if they invest a lot into it. If former COD pros, you know, current challenger players that are just not able to crack into the league end up going into XDefiant, it's maybe something Brock and I would keep our eye on, because we both like playing the game. And if they have an interesting competitive scene that ends up being fun to watch, which I think it could, it might be something we kind of dive into on the podcast, and maybe we end up covering a little bit of both leagues. Maybe we do an XDefiant segment where we're talking about matches over there. Maybe we do 2 episodes a week where one's XDefiant and one's Call of Duty. I don't know. It could be something like that where we're kind of talking a little bit about both. It's something to explore. So really excited. Hopefully XDefiant continues to polish their game, comes out with a good ranked play, and has a really good backed competitive scene, because to me it's a very fun game, and I know it's a genre that's very hard to make it in, because like the arcade shooter genre has pretty much been Call of Duty. I mean, Halo kind of falls in that. I don't know what you consider, because obviously Halo is very different, and Halo was extremely successful for a while and has kind of fallen a little bit from that success that they had for quite some time. But very excited to see where XDefiant could go, because to me it's a very fun game, and I hope to see it continue to succeed. Always good to have competition for Call of Duty to push them to finally give us some good stuff. Good stuff there. Last thing I really wanted to get into today, obviously, like I said, being solo, going to be a bit of a shorter episode. Last thing I wanted to get into was predictions. When Brock and I had Brock send me his predictions quick, like with his points for each thing. Unfortunately for the year, Brock cannot win. I ended up winning the Major 3 standings. So I swept Brock. He was really close. It was a 5-point game in Major 1. I beat him out, smoked him, almost doubled up his points in Major 2, and it was a 21-point win for me in Major 3. So predictions-wise, I ended up taking out Brock no matter what. So going into Major 4, he's just playing for pride, trying not to get 4-0 swept, like probably the Pacers and I'm blanking, Timberwolves are about to do right now. So Brock's trying not to get swept, playing for pride here in the last split. But when Brock and I were talking about these matches, we were like, God, it seems like there's so many matches. We've been like brainwashed to the weird 2-3-3 format, whereas this weekend is a 3-4-4 format, 3 on Friday, 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. So really, really excited to get into these matches, especially because there are like a lot of implication matches. I mean, like obviously like the top 4 teams playing in this major, oddly enough, aren't as interesting just because like we know they're all making champs and all that, and like we know they're going to qualify for winners. So we're mostly interested in where the bottom 8 teams, especially that like 7 apart from Boston, make it. So like the match of like Carolina LAG, the Battle of LA, like Minnesota Seattle, Boston LAT, like even these teams like Vegas playing Texas, Miami playing Texas, Vegas playing Toronto, Seattle playing Toronto, like all these bottom teams, if they can upset a top 4 team, it goes like a crazy long way because it's a match that we just had penciled in for a loss and no CDL points for them, where if they could actually pull off the upset and win it, it could lead to some crazy, crazy things. If you're able to upset a top 4 team as one of the bottom 7 teams fighting for those spots, it could just go such a long way for your qualification for champs. So just going to go ahead and make our predictions here. I have Brock's predictions and everything. He wrote down some notes for me too. Just going to mention those as we go along, and I'll make my predictions as well. So I've got all Brock's down here. So first match of the weekend, starting on Friday, Seattle versus Toronto, a rematch of the last majors, round 1 in winners. Toronto kind of rolled through them relatively easily. I expect that to happen again. I think Seattle's going to be able to take a map, so I'm going to give it Toronto 3-1 and put 2 points on it. That's exactly what Brock did as well on this one. Kind of just said the same thing for him. Like Toronto just out-talent, even though Seattle will make it slightly competitive because they've finally gotten themselves to a point where they're actually a decent team, which I do want to give a shout out to Seattle. Like they were able to get another top 6 at the major, and like I believe I think they deserve a lot of credit because there was a point in the year where they were like clearly the worst team for like a little bit there, or like right on the bottom 2, and they could have easily given up. You know, it was like nothing they made roster change wise was working. It was kind of chalked, but like, you know, they kept pushing. They made role swaps. They made roster changes. They made all this stuff, like adjustments. They just kept playing, kept grinding. And they're now at a spot where Seattle legitimately look like they could be one of those 5th or 6th teams. Like we obviously know our top 4 solidify, but Seattle's to the point like with teams like LAT, with the way Miami looked last weekend, with the way Carolina has looked at times, like you can make a debate that Seattle certainly deserves to be in like our 5th/6th spot for teams, which shout out to them because there was a while there where it looked like they were never going to get out of the bottom 2. And now when we see them in matches against Toronto, it's not like impossible for us to say, you know, they can make this a close series. Whereas before it'd be like absolute 3-0 blowout. So both of us going 3-1, putting 2 points on it. Second match, it's Minnesota, it's Boston. Just a battle of 2 very disappointing teams. I would like to know if Minnesota's going to make a roster change because it feels like they should with how poor they've played, and like accuracy seems like an obvious choice as much as we love accuracy here. Like everybody knows Brock and I are like the biggest accuracy stands probably that have a mic in front of us. Just always pounding the table for accuracy. We love him, but I would think a roster change has got to be coming, but we haven't heard about anything yet. So I'm going to assume at this point he's staying, and I'm still going to pick him. I'm going to pick Minnesota to win. And funny enough, in a game 5, Boston continues the not able to win game 5 or search and destroy in general. I'm going to only put 1 point on it, Minnesota 3-2, and Brock did the opposite. He picked a Boston 3-2 with 1 point, and I really like what he said. He wanted me specifically to mention they got Major Maniac. He's got game 5 ice. He's changing the fortunes. And I'm not going to lie, I love that, and it makes me hate my Minnesota 3-2 pick, but I'm just going to stick with it. But everybody knows Brock loves Major Maniac, always like saying the joke about how tippable he is. Brock loves Major. And honestly, I like the prediction from him. They finally get game 5 ice because Major's there. It would be kind of poetic and funny. So I like that out of Brock, picking Boston 3-2. Final match on Friday, it's Carolina and LAG. See, to me, like, this is the thing with Carolina, is this should be an easy win. They should be able to polish this off and, like, get themselves a good head start to trying to qualify for champs. But, like, something tells me they're going to choke this. I just really want them to win so bad, so I'm going to say they don't. I'm going to agree with Brock, who picked Carolina 3-1 and put 2 points on it, simply because I can't bring myself to think they possibly could lose to LAG with how bad they looked in the major on LAN. But LAG did not look bad online at all with Flames. Like, they won those first 2 matches. I'm going to pick Carolina to win 3-1, though. Put 2 points on it. Brock did the same thing. I'm just going to pray they do, because I really want to see Carolina at champs. They at least make LAN series fun. So it would be very disappointing if they end up falling here to LAG and help LAG's cause of making champs. That would be very, very, very sad. First match on Saturday, it's the Battle of LA. As we all know, LAG owns it. However, I think LAT wins it, and I'm praying they do, because there's a real world where LAG wins 2 matches this weekend and then all of a sudden finds themselves right in the thick of champs. And that would be pissed, because I want to see both Carolina and LAT, who they play this week, make it over them. I do think this one's going to go a little bit further, though. I'm going to say this goes to a map 5, because these Battle of LA matches are always really weird, and I'm putting 2 points on it. Brock just made a note. LAT's been so much better online, so he also picked them 3-2 over LAG, which is shocking, because we know Brock is the resident LAG stan, so I'm surprised he didn't pick them in the Battle of LA, where they typically win. Second match on Saturday, we've got Las Vegas Legion versus the Toronto Ultra. Would love to say I can see Vegas getting a win here and getting back on track, but unfortunately for Vegas, obviously the last split after dropping Purge, extremely rough for them. The LAN tournament did not go any better. They were, beat right away by Miami, bowed out in last place, started in losers bracket. And this split doesn't get any easier for them off the rip. They obviously have to go ahead and play Toronto in this match. And then, as we'll get to it later, they play the final match of the weekend, which is against OpTic. So pulling up the Vegas Legion schedule here just for the split, like, it's not going to get any easier next week either. They play Ultra, OpTic this week. Then they go into next week. They have 1 match. It's against NYSL. So they could likely go another 2 weeks without winning a match. They play 3 of the top 4 teams. And then going into that next weekend, it doesn't even get that much easier. They play Seattle, who's probably in the 5 or 6 range right now. So, they finally get to play a bottom 8 team, but it's one of the best ones. Then they finally get a little bit of a breather where they play LAG, got to get a win there. And then they play LAT and then Minnesota. So another top tier of our bottom teams in LAT, and then Minnesota, maybe a lower team. But honestly, Vegas is probably going to have to find a way to upset a top 4 team in these first 3 matches if they want a good chance at champs, since they're also playing from behind right now. And then they're going to have to find a way to rattle off 3 of 4 wins against Seattle, LAT, LAG, and Minnesota. They're going to have to find a way to rattle off minimum 3 wins in those 4 matches, if not all 4. Because not only do they just need the wins to make a winner's bracket, they need the wins to gain some damn points here, because they've been just stagnant for so long since the Purge change. However, I don't think they get it done here. I think Toronto's going to 3-0 them and continue that trend. Although Vegas has gone to map 5 both times with Johnny, I think Toronto's going to come out with some fire after losing in the finals of the major in a pretty dominant fashion from OpTic. I'm going Toronto 3-0, putting 2 points on it. Brock went Toronto 3-1, and he put 2 points on it. He just said Vegas can't beat top teams, and they've been struggling mightily since they dropped Purge, echoing kind of what I said. OpTic versus Miami obviously was a little bit close at the major. Actually, some close maps, but as we saw maybe from the process video, maybe OpTic was a little bit off that day, and you could kind of see, because then the next day they looked incredible. Brock picked OpTic 3-0, put 4 points on it, said just talent diff. And he also made a mention of Miami doesn't have Dave Patty to stop OpTic. Brock's favorite player, Dave Patty. They need him. Mutineers, Heretics, whoever, they need Dave Patty to stop OpTic. It was the one time they could really do it. Although, they were a little bit of a curse even on OpTic in MW19. But Florida was pretty good that year. I'm going to agree with him, though. I think OpTic are going to 3-0 them. I could see a slight tournament hangover with it being their first match. Maybe they start out slow, lose a map or 2, but I'd be pretty shocked if OpTic doesn't win this. So I'm going 3-0 OpTic, putting 2 points on it. Only reason I'm not putting my 4 on it is because Brock already did so, and he has the advantage. Final match on Saturday, it's Carolina Royal Ravens versus the New York Subliners. I actually think this one is going to go the distance. I think Carolina's going to play them very tight. I think it's going to go map 5, putting 2 points on Subliners in a 3-2 win. Brock is going 3-1 NYSL here. Just basically making a note that Carolina's online struggles are going to continue from Brock. So I like that out of Brock pretty much. I guess agree with it for the most part. Moving on to Sunday, Minnesota, Seattle, an absolutely crucial match here. Seattle trying to hold on to position, Minnesota trying to get into that position. Oh boy, let's see. I don't know where I want to go with this one. Brock went with Minnesota over Seattle in a game 5. Oh, do I agree with him though? Everybody knows I really want to pick Minnesota. I'm going to agree with him. No, Seattle's going to win it. They are the better team. What am I saying? Brock picked Minnesota in a game 5, put 1 point on it. I think probably out of wishful thinking like I want to. I think Seattle's going to take them out 3-1, and I'm going to put 2 points on it just because I'm not going to pick with my heart. I'm going to pick with my head, and Seattle is the better team. So I should just go ahead and pick them. Then it's Boston versus LAT. Brock just made a note, 3-2 LAT, game 5 Dan Ghosty, and he put 1 point on it. I'm going to say LAT are actually able to take this one out a little faster. I think they're going to take them out 3-1. I think Boston's going to take the map 1, and then LAT is going to roll 3 straight. So 3-1 LAT, putting 2 points on this one. I'm just going to put my faith in the fact that they've been pretty good online, and Boston has been abysmal overall. Then it's Atlanta, NYSL. I actually think Atlanta's going to roll them 3-0. I don't know why, but I think they're going to roll them 3-0. And I'm putting my 2 points on it here. Brock went with an Atlanta 3-2, put 2 points on it. He just basically said they're still Faze, they're still clutch, they're still better. I agree. Obviously, they're still Faze. This NYSL team is so weird. I could see them coming out and winning this match or getting 3-0'd or literally anything because this team is so talented, but it just seems so off at times. And then the final match is OpTic versus Vegas. Brock went with a 3-1 OpTic and just said brutal weekend for Vegas. Obviously, with them having to play both Toronto and OpTic, their push for champs off to a slow start, having to play those two teams. I'm going to agree with him. I'm going to think OpTic 3-0 Vegas, and I'm putting 4 points on that one. And yeah, that's it for predictions. A fun weekend, though, because obviously, like, everything is going to be fun online with this major, with these teams vying for position, unless we get to like a really weird spot where like teams somehow have a substantial lead, which just isn't going to be the case because they're all so tight. And I don't see any of them like running away with 6-1, 7-0 splits, just the way that it goes. But yeah, I'm very excited to watch the matches this weekend. Obviously, unfortunately, we couldn't have Brock on here today. He's still traveling back from the weekend, but super excited to dive into this final major. I'm going to be watching, as much as possible. It's my birthday weekend coming up this weekend, so I've got a lot of plans with family, friends, everyone in my life. I'm just being dragged around all weekend to random plans. I'm not sure what's going on, but birthday weekend for me this weekend, so going to be a pretty busy weekend. Going to catch up on VOD, maybe Sunday night when I have the chance ahead of the Monday podcast recording. Maybe we can do the player tier list next week, depending on how much we have to really talk about from the matches. Could just do player tier list and then predictions potentially. But if you guys enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio platforms, drop a follow, drop a 5-star review. Brock and I appreciate your support as always. Like I said, you guys absolutely crushed it on the last video. It doesn't go unnoticed. We really, 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 really appreciate you guys. We're working. Obviously, I know a lot of you guys been asking for different upgrades. I've been moving like a million times. I haven't actually lived in the same spot for more than a year. I've moved 7 years in a row. I've moved to a new place. So been chaotic, had a lot of expenses with that. We're working. Webcams are coming. We're working on all that, getting just a better setup. But we don't want to just like throw something out that's just half-assed and low quality, because I'm going to be honest with you, as you guys have known from the past, I'm terrible with the editing things. Like, it took me so long to figure this out, all Photoshop with, the bracket, with it not being out, figured that all out. So just bear with us, obviously. Got some help from some other people that do some podcasts in the Call of Duty scene. Been talking to them behind the scenes, just working on, the logistics of it, how to make it look good and graphics and all that. So we're working on stuff like that. Don't worry. We see your comments. It's just annoying because it's stuff that, you know, we obviously know we need to work on and we've been working on, but just other factors have kind of held us from that. Been very, very, very busy with other life things, unfortunately. But we appreciate all your support. As always, like I said, drop a like, drop a comment on YouTube if you enjoyed, subscribe. If you're on the audio platforms, drop that follow, drop that 5-star review. It really does help us out more than you know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys next week with some reactions to the matches, some predictions, and potentially the player tier list again. So see you guys later.